What's happening, boys and girls? James from Sigma Strength and Physique, coming at you with a shoulder session. And when I said boys and girls, I mean boys and girls. Ladies, this is one that you should be doing for the most part too. The theme of this session is not just going to be about smashing shoulders, it's going to be about choosing exercises that have good profiles, which we'll talk about what that means soon, and also prioritizing exercises to complement your or work on your sort of weaker body parts within a particular session. So I'm not looking at the overall split, just say we're doing a shoulder day or leg day, how we would structure that individual day. What I'm actually doing here is working my rear delts, and this is an example of an exercise that has a good profile. So when we talk about profile, I'm going to define it very, very loosely, but it essentially means a movement. We could define it two ways. One, we could just say it's a movement that is going to be hard or create tension through the entire part of the rep. But what it really means is choosing an exercise where the load of that movement is hardest, where your muscle that you're working is the strongest, and where it's easiest at the point of the movement where your muscle is the weakest. So your muscle will always be stronger in a lengthened and mid position. If you don't know what that means, we'll probably describe it another time, so I'm not making this a lab coat video. No one watches these anyway, so I don't want to make them any more boring. But essentially, when your muscle lengthens, which we'll demonstrate in a moment through the rear delt, it's the strongest, and when it shortens, it is the weakest. So what we're trying to do here is work the rear delts, which is the back of the shoulders. And so in this position here where my rear delt is stretched out, I'm actually the strongest, and as my arms come out and the rear delt shortens, my delts are actually weaker. So this movement has a reasonably static profile, but what it actually does is, compared to dumbbells, is there's tension the entire way. So obviously there's tension as I pull my arms back, but I'm also fighting the cables as my arms come back in, as opposed to some variations with dumbbells where, due to gravity, as your arms are coming back in or your arms are lowering, there is no tension. So it just makes the movement more efficient. That's a really important criteria when choosing exercises, rather than just grabbing something you saw on YouTube. Giving you sort of visual from the back here, really trying to keep the scapula quite still, so my shoulder blade's quite still, trying not to lurch back at all, just simply trying to get the arms to come out. So the cue with this is arms out, and in virtue of them going out, they will come back. We're really having a static small bend in the shoulder, and just maintaining that. If the shoulder static bend in the elbow, so a little small bend in the elbow, which you'll see here, and we keep that fixed, and just simply open the arms up. As soon as the elbow starts to bend a bit more or straighten, the tension starts to come off the rear delt. And you'll see here I'm leaning slightly forward, making sure that when my arms come back, I'm not actually lurching back with it, so I'm not using my body weight to lurch back. Basically what I'm doing here is did a couple of working sets where I worked into the shortened range where I was the weakest, and now I'm pretty cooked. I'm actually loading the weight up and just working that lengthened range. So even though this looks like little small movements, they are absolutely dreadfully painful. And I'm just doing a drop set. So basically I'll sort of work my way down, just get as many as I can. I'm sort of aiming for around that kind of 8 to 15 rep range, and I'll go out and back as far as I can, and to continue the rep, I'll just maintain that static bend in the elbow and just do little pulses the entire time. I'm keeping tension on the rear delt, so I'm not relaxing as I come in. I'm really sort of maximizing the point of using cables as opposed to dumbbells by fighting the cables as they come back in, rather than just letting them sort of fling in. Just keep moving. The other thing with delts is they really respond well to drop sets, supersets, just absolutely just pumping them full of lactic acid and blood, and goodness is what makes them grow. Just sort of anecdotally, I found that the people with the best delts don't tend to do straight sort of working sets, doing their 3 or 4 sets of 10, then moving on. They tend to superset them, tri-set. I mean, you need to do some heavy work, of course, and that's what we're doing here. We did a couple of heavy working sets, and now we're just doing a big drop set just to really fry them. So you can see this movement's difficult irrespective of how big the range of motion is. And the other thing to remember is you've always got more left in the lengthen range. So if you were to stop this movement as soon as your arms could no longer get right out and back and shortened, you're leaving so much in the tank in this little bit of lengthen range that we have here. These little sort of 6 or 7 inch reps that we're doing, and so it's a crying shame to stop when the muscle is gasping and begging for more punishment. So I think we do sort of 4 or 5 drop sets here, just keep them moving. You see these little reps look like nothing, but rest assured they're pretty dreadful. And I think we're down to just the very last. I don't think it's even a weight. That's how hard these get. But I thought I'd show you the entire sort of group of drop sets, so you get a feel for how to train them. So you can see I can start sort of shortening the rear delt, and then it just turns to SHIT pretty quickly. But just keep moving, just keep that elbow slightly bent, fixed, squeezing the handles as hard as you can, and it's just out, and that's cooked me. But that wasn't quite enough. So to finish the rear delts off, we're doing just one big set of just the very, very top range. So here I'm actually able to still shorten the rear delt. Gravity to the rescue. Lying in this position allows me to get that shortened range of motion. So I'm only going sort of a quarter or a third of the way down, not worrying about that length and range. Remember, when the dumbbell is below my shoulder, there's no tension anyway. So just keeping it moving, and the movement is out. So you're not flinging them back, you're not flinging them up, you're literally just pushing out. Maybe having the dumbbells sort of lightly hanging in your fingers, and just keep them moving, just little pulses, and I reckon the rear delts are sufficiently cooked there. What we're doing here is some banded shoulder press. Now, I put rear delts first because most people's rear delts suck. Everyone works front delts first. It costs you nothing to do rear delts first, or take nothing away from your big pressing movements. What I'm doing here is machine press. I'm not really fussed with what press you do, barbell, dumbbell. I mix it up a bit. Today I felt like doing machine one. What I've done is I've banded these up, so it's only about 40 kilos each side, or 80 kilos total at the bottom, where we're the weakest. And as the bands stretch, it becomes a lot heavier. So that's pretty good for me, because sometimes the shoulders, because I'm an old bastard now, turned 38 during the week, thank you very much, that the unracking part of the lower part can be quite taxing. So it's a way to really still load up by having like a moderate weight where you're the most vulnerable at the bottom, and then where you're the strongest, the weight increases. So that's just another example of a way that we can change the profile of a movement. The other way would be, which might be hard on the machine, is to do reverse bands from the top. So as the weight lowers down, the bands stretch and it becomes lighter in that lower position. So what I did before was just my top set, which was a set of about 6 to 8, and now I'm just dropping down about 25%, doing a second working set of whatever I can get. Normally, I try and get a weight that's going to be around that 8 to 12 rep range. I think it's a pretty good rep range for hypertrophy, but obviously don't stop at 12 if you can do more. And then we're just straight into a drop set. So similar to the rear delts, strip the weight off and just go nuts. I don't spend a lot of time doing direct front delt work. My front delts are probably overdeveloped relative to the rest of my body probably. Arms, as you can see there, being 6'5", having long limbs, arms need to fill out, and having pretty big delts can sort of make your arms look even smaller. So I just sort of rip through a couple of working sets, and then just to finish things off, just drop set. So it's really done in 5 minutes. I don't want to be doing 4 big heavy working sets with 3 minutes rest in between. So I think we'll show you the last couple of sets again, just to sort of see how it's done. But going back to the original topic of putting the rear delts first, I think that's really smart. Again, I get nearly all my clients doing rear delts first. Rear delts look awesome on women. They look awesome on guys. You should absolutely hammer side delts, and instead of doing the traditional shoulder day of doing 50 different types of overhead presses and then leaving rear delts and side delts to the very end, if at all. I think that's the reason most people's medial and rear delts lack. And just to be a prick to myself, I took the bands off and did the kids' weights for a few reps. As you see, I wasn't in too much of a hurry to get back in there, but I still did it. I turned up, and just take this to failure. It started off pretty easy, but I think we got sort of 15-20 reps. But look, it's pretty boring to watch, but I think it's helpful just to see how these last few sets go, as opposed just to showing our top sets where we're moving manly weights. There will be a couple of movements in here which I'll let you know, girls, when we get to them, which I don't think for the most part will make a woman's physique look good, but again, that's an individual thing. So if you want to have big traps, etc., go for it. So I'm doing an upright row here, just doing a couple of warm-up reps on it. I hate and love this movement. I just think it's great for upper back, shoulders. It makes me feel like a man to hold some heavy weight. We've got an 80 kilo kettlebell, which is definitely the heaviest one we've got. And I think they make a 96 kilo now. I'm looking at it and convincing myself to do it. But this is a pretty underrated movement, I think, just traps, even side delts, just an overall power movement. You'll need a lot of leg drive in it. Now, it's not the only way to do upright rows, but it's the way I do it. And because I hate it so much, I set myself a target of one set of as many as I can get. And I think I got 23 last week, so I'm going for 24 today. So there's a lot of challenges in it. There's a lot of leg drive, a lot of power. And yes, you'll have some people say, oh, it's bad for your shoulders and da-da-da-da. I've never had any issues with this movement. And I think having the narrow overhand grip with the kettlebell actually takes away a lot of the problems. I think the issues with upright rows in the past have been people holding bars and their wrists are just in this shit position. So kettlebells are fantastic. I, to my knowledge, haven't had any of my clients have issues with upright rows, maybe one or two over the years, but that's normally going to happen anyway with a bar or whatever. So it's not a movement I particularly want girls doing too much of. So there is a bit of upper trap involved in this. So girls, I'll probably leave this one out, but boys, man up and find a kettlebell and just hammer it. So look, there's a few ways you can do it, like the traditional 3 sets of 10 to 12, whatever. Like I said, I hate it so much, and you can just forget about me being interested in doing multiple sets of reps on 80 kilos. So you can see I'm pretty cooked there. So you can see the theme so far is rear delts, prioritising that, getting a bit of shoulder press in, just because it is a good movement. It's good for mass from the front delts. Now we're looking at another movement that has a brilliant profile. So this is for side delts, medial delts, and in my opinion, it almost makes dumbbell side raises redundant due to the profile. And so I'll go through what's happening here. So arms straight, let's say cuff lateral side raise. I certainly didn't invent this, much smarter people than me did. But what's really good about it is I'm lying down, so my glenohumeral joint, my shoulder joint, actually doesn't restrict me from shortening the side delt more than I normally could with a standing dumbbell raise. So I can actually get the side delt to contract more than it would normally. I've also got tension on the way in, like we did with the rear delt. So normally just with gravity, the weight drops straight down. There's very little resistance. Here, it's just as hard as you're coming in as it is going out. And it's just a really slow time under tension movement. When I say time under tension, don't go out of your way to go super slow. I always advocate the fastest speed that you can control the weight with, but any faster and elbows might bend, or we start to jerk the weight around a little bit. But it really is a tough one. You'll find the first few reps are pretty easy, and then next thing you know, it just hits you. And because the profile is so demanding, the profile is so good, you really die on your ass pretty quick because there's just no recovery. With dumbbell side raises, you can sort of rest at the bottom. Here, there's just literally no rest. You see, it's just simply opening the arms up. It's really kind on the shoulders. And the other thing you'll find is when you're cooked with this, you can just keep like moving those arms out. Like you can really just go nuts and just go as hard as you can. Where with dumbbells, just through the angle of the movement and just sort of with gravity and whatnot, you just can't quite keep pushing. It's sort of hard to explain, so you get in here. With this, I can just keep pushing out, and just get everything out of the medial delt. And again, this is another one that's really great to drop sets. I'll do a couple of working sets, or I'll work up to probably 8 to 15 or so for 2 working sets. A couple of minutes rest in between, and then so you can see with this, I can just keep pushing out, and then just little partials in the length and range where we're a little bit stronger. I think that might have been my second working set. I just worked into a drop set. Now something for the traps. Yeah, girls probably leave this one out. Upper traps don't normally look good on you fine ladies, but boys, go nuts. Big traps look mean and brutal. Normally I do very light weights seated down, but today I tried to throw some heavy weight around, use the legs, and just try and give the traps some really heavy weight. So this is probably something I do once every sort of 4 sessions or so. See, the range of motion's not quite as high as I could get, but I think the traps like heavy weights. So I did a couple of working sets on that. Got the straps on for this one, and again, just getting the weight up there. I'm fine with using legs. We try not to bend the elbows too much, but whatever you can to get the weight up there and still try and have a bit of a genuine contraction and shrug at the top. But I do think it's good just to mix some heavy weight in for the traps occasionally. Working the upper traps is not something that gets worked that well through your deadlifting, so you work sort of more your mid and lower traps throughout. And I think this was a really ambitious set where I almost got pulled over, I think. So I think I got sort of 5 or 6, but they're testing the friendship, these ones. And I have a couple of plates sitting down there for a drop set, a couple of just 25 kilo plates, I think they were 20-25s, and just shrugging away until the traps go numb. And I won't bore you with how many reps I did. So it's just like good contractions, so you can see I'm there still trying to get what's left in the traps, because I didn't fatigue them too much with that last set. So again, it's just sort of being honest to yourself about, have I really done the job? And again, a movement with an awesome profile, so just throw a bit of bicep work in. At the end, biceps are weak points. I train them 3 or 4 times a week. I give them a couple of sessions on their own. But here, this is an example of a good profile. So the dumbbell, so our biceps are strongest at the bottom here, in that lengthen to mid-range, and get weakest as the dumbbell comes up and the bicep shortens. So this movement responds to that. So in this movement, the weight is the heaviest at the bottom, and as it gets up closer to our elbow, it lightens where we get weakest. So this is an example of a great bicep movement. It's my go-to bicep movement. I almost say you could just almost do this exclusively for biceps. It's got good bracing as well, so you can brace yourself in there, driving that tricep hard into the bench. It's kind on the wrists. What I'm actually doing, see on the angle there, I'm trying to have my upper arm, so between my elbow joint and my shoulder, dead in line. It's just great for elbow health. So I think it's one of the reasons you'll see me almost contorted over there, and I sort of prefer doing a standing version to a seated version. It just gives me a little bit more ability to get that upper arm in that straight position. So it's something I'll probably talk about more in another video. But I end up doing just 2 working sets with some assisted reps here. Obviously, the other great thing with this is you can give yourself some assistance on it and you're still well braced. I think we dumped that, and I think for the last set I ended up doing to failure on my working weight, and then dropped it down to like some silly lightweight, which still embarrassed me. I think it was like 10 kilos for as many as I can. So just finishing with the drops there, just getting whatever you can out of the biceps. Remember, there's only so much volume to go around. You can't sit around and do 4 sets of 10 on everything. And again, biceps are the ones that respond, in my opinion. Arms respond pretty well to some high rep and supersets and drop sets and that sort of stuff. And there's only so much weight you're really going to move on your biceps at the end of a session as well. So I'll throw biceps in at the end just as an extra thing, but I'll also give them their own day. So it's just a way of getting some extra bicep work in. But I think you sort of see what I was talking about with profiles and prioritizing weaker body parts, or prioritizing body parts that won't affect the rest of your session. So throwing rear delts in at the start of the session will take nothing away from your pressing, and it's just like almost like a pretty sweet hack that you can use. And sexy rear delts on boys and girls is desirable. So thanks for watching, guys. Any comments, please post below, and if you haven't already, subscribe. I've got to get this subscriber base up. People tell me these videos are good, but none of you lazy bastards have a YouTube account. Okay, ciao, train hard.